Hey friends, Keith Ellison here, your people's lawyer, Minnesota Attorney General's office. And thank you for joining us for another edition of Affording Your Life, which is a really, really important way we communicate about critical issues at the Attorney General's office. First and foremost, we're focusing on working class economics. Working class economics like payday lending, wage theft, bad landlords, the kind of economics that, makes a difference between whether you're making it or not. We look at everyone. We look at the ways that workers are getting through, small business people, consumers all the time. And, everybody really does mean everybody, elected officials, community members, business leaders, and everyday people, and how we are making it through the economy. Far more than the Dow Jones Industrial Average, which may not have much of anything to do with you, but the economics of everyday life. That's what we focus on Affording Your Life. Now, we started out 2026 with 2 special edition episodes. One of them was with my former colleague and friend and Congresswoman, Pramila Jayapal from the great city of Seattle and the state of Washington. And the next one is with renowned legendary journalist, Katie Couric, who is delightful, and it was great to talk to her. This particular episode, we have another mission. This episode, I want to talk directly to Minnesotans and anyone around the country who is concerned about the surge of immigration customs enforcement agents, ICE agents, on our streets. This surge is having a profound impact on Minnesotans' ability to afford their lives, from small business owners who are struggling with decreased business, decreased traffic, fewer people coming to buy meals or whatever it is, to workers who are scared to go to their shift and who are waiting on loved ones and friends or even strangers to get rides to work because they just don't want to run the risk of running into ICE when they're all on their own. Minnesotans have been stepping up in all kinds of ways, and I'm committed to matching your bravery. Now, let me just give this a little bit of context. Never, and I do mean never, in the history of America have ICE agents, immigration enforcement agents of any kind, whether they be INS agents, if you remember that, or Border Patrol or anyone, never before have immigration officials been concentrated in one place at one time like they are right now. This is the largest single deployment of immigration officials in the history of the country. People should know right now, 10 to 12% of all immigration officials and officers in America are in Minnesota. And what are they doing? Well, they're killing our neighbors. We'll never forget Renee Good and Alex Preddy. And also a third man who was shot but who did not die. We don't say his name because he has a right to privacy, but we still are very concerned about his case. But what about the countless numbers of people thrown to the ground, sprayed with chemical irritants, knocking on doors, demanding papers from people for no probable cause at all? Just, you might be an immigrant. There is a wave of terror across our state. It must end. It must end now. And there are people who have questions, and we just want to answer them. So let's get started. Who's ready?
Can you talk about what the last month has felt like for you on the ground here in Minnesota?
Well, the last month has been one where everybody, including me, has felt a certain amount of stress and tension. My wife monitors all of the signal chats, and so she knows where ICE might be at any given minute, and people are putting information on there to say ICE is here, ICE is there, and it feels like they're everywhere. Giving loved ones rides back and forth to work is something that has a profound impact. But also having people come into the office and show video. And, we've been working on the civil side. We filed lawsuits against Immigration Customs Enforcement, been to court against them, going back, believe me, on that one. And of course, have partnered with the Hennepin County Attorney's Office in the investigation involving Renee Good and Alex Preddy. Gone to many vigils, gone to many marches in 9 degrees below, and that's not even counting the wind chill. There has been a blanket of fear all across our state, and I have found myself feeling like never will I give in to fear. Never in a million years, never will I give in to their bullying. Never will we allow ourselves to be intimidated by these people. And so that's a little bit about how it's been around Minnesota recently. I have been so amazed at the bravery of people. And some folks are like, Keith, I can't march. I got bad knees. Well, these are the same people who are organizing mutual aid to get people money, food, and other stuff like that. Other folks, they're like, I can march, but what I really do is art. And so I've seen artists step up. There was a wonderful concert at First Avenue that included, Bruce Springsteen and other tremendous artists who are all in solidarity with Minnesota. And so, yeah, this has been, to use a cliche, the best of times and the worst of times. At the end of the day, I think the most prophetic voice might have been Jacob Fry, who said, "Get the F out." And I guess I agree with that.
What is the status of your lawsuit to stop the unlawful surge of ICE agents here in the state?
Right. Well, that lawsuit that we filed to end Operation Metro Surge, which I filed with Minneapolis and St. Paul, now has been joined and supported by many, many municipalities. This lawsuit basically said the following: the states of the United States joined the federal government way back in 1791, when we established the Constitution, in order to form a more perfect union. We know that one. But the states retain certain authorities and powers of their own, known as police powers. And when I use the word police, I don't mean cops. I mean just all the powers that go along with running your state. The Board of Medical Licensing, the Board of Cosmetology, the Board of Legal Licensing, the Department of Education, Department of Corrections, the State Attorney General's Office. All of these powers that states have to maintain, regulate, and promote the welfare of their citizens, these are preserved in the 10th Amendment, and certain other powers, like immigration, for example, are reserved to the federal government. Well, our lawsuit said, look, federal government, you cannot make us give over our voting rolls, for example. You cannot make us do a lot of things because the 10th Amendment doesn't allow you to bully us that way. So if you can't make us do it with a law or even an executive order, how in the world can you send 3,500 people with guns, aiming them at us, even killing some of our people, to make us do this? We won't do it. And that's what the lawsuit was about. Now, some of you know that we did not win the temporary restraining order. And I was disappointed when that happened. But one of the problems is that there's no precedent for this kind of behavior. The court was like, well, look, what case do I base my decision on? And so we're asking for expedited discovery. What does that mean? Well, expedited means sped up. And discovery is just that when you file a lawsuit, you are entitled to get information from the people you're suing, and they are obliged to give it to you, and vice versa. So we believe that the quicker we get the information from the government proving that they have illegal and improper motives to try to demand stuff of us, the quicker we will be able to win this case. And because I think that will be persuasive to the court. So that's the status. I think we got a great case. It is a little bit novel because its behavior is novel. And so we fight on.
Last weekend, you were out in Minneapolis talking with community members and small business owners. Can you talk about how Operation Metro Surge is harming our local businesses?
Well, last week I was just hanging out in my beloved Minneapolis in Minnesota. And I was walking through Minneapolis, St. Paul, went up to Grand Rapids, went over to Duluth, went out to a farm, talked to some different people. And I can tell you what I saw in Mercado Central, which is such a wonderful place. And if you've ever had the blessing of walking through that great place right there on Lake Street, all the beautiful colors, all of the little shops where they sell items that would be appropriate for a young woman's quinceañera, or, piñatas, or, little Katrinas, which are the skeletal figures that, are part of Mexican culture. And the food, the great smells, Usually it's a bustling place where you got to wait in line. Not now. There weren't too many people there. And it was sad for me. It was sad because this is a wonderful place. And if you want a little bit of not just Mexico, but like anywhere in Latin America, you walk through Mercado Central and you feel that, and but what you saw is just not bustling activity, but a community intimidated by the federal government, which is actually destroying businesses. And how in the world is anyone better off by what they're doing? Also, we went to other places as well. We went to the Carmel Mall, which is where a lot of Somali business people do things. And, again, the activity was not what it usually is. Not nearly as many people there as normal. Not nearly as much activity there. People stopped me and said, "Oh, ICE came through here. Everybody ran away. Then they came back." People are nervous. People are, but they're also coping, and they also are resilient. We actually stopped. We stopped at Lindale and Lake in the corner, got some pizza, and businesses like Smitten Kitten, we heard about their mutual aid and distribution centers. Stopped in to speak with the owner of My Hong Kitchen. She was helping to give shelter to bystanders at her restaurant when tear gas was deployed against them, and they were trying to escape that tear gas right at the site of Alex Preddy's murder. That was on Nicollet, we call it Eat Street around here, and everybody knows Eat Street, where you can get, I don't know, you can get some Chinese, you can get some Vietnamese, you can get some Thai, you can get some, I don't know, you can get whatever you want. You can get Greek, if you want to eat, you can eat from all across the world. And that is exactly what Trump seems to hate. He wants us to just have one kind of restaurant serving one kind of food and only one kind of way. I guess it would be all McDonald's if he got his way. Why is this man so scared of people who live life a little different from him? So, yeah, that's what Minneapolis is like, but I have no doubt that we will bounce back. But I don't want anyone to think that this thing hasn't caused real damage.
How are Minnesotans stepping up to meet what is truly an unprecedented challenge in the history of our country?
One of the interesting things about the moment we're in is the Minnesotans who don't own a business, who have not been trained organizers, who've never been active and involved, and how they have stepped up. So many people who have told me, I've never been to a protest before. I was out at the Whipple Center, which is where the federal ICE agents sort of their little headquarters out near the airport. And so many people offering coffee, cookies, anything warm to keep people a little warmer out there in the cold. Some people wearing full body snowsuits. And I said, hey, you've been to a protest before? Many people, no, never. This is the first one I've ever been to. And so this is pushing us out of our comfort zone. This is making us stretch and do new things. And it's really a beautiful thing to watch. If you've ever had the opportunity to talk to somebody who might be in their 20s or 30s or 40s or even 60s, who this is their first protest, their first moment where they're carrying a sign saying ICE out, it's quite a thing. And it teaches in me a lot, and it renews my confidence in people. And I've been elected a public official since 2002, and now it's 2026. So I've been at this for a little while. And then before that, I was practicing law, and before that, I was a student activist way back when I went to Wayne State, and even when I was in high school. So for me, this is sort of like just what I've done with my life. But it's, so I need people to refresh my memory. When is the first protest I went to? When is the first time I carried a sign? What's the first march I ever went to? And it's beautiful to see people care for their neighbors that way.
Keith, you were 5 years old when the Detroit riots took place. Can you talk about what you remember from that experience?
Well, when I was 5, Detroit riots took place, and when I see young Liam Conejo Ramos and how ICE arrested him and then used him as bait to lure his relatives out of their home, I go immediately to my own experience of being 5. And I remember standing on my tiptoes, looking out of the window and seeing military vehicles rolling down Outer Drive, which is a street in Detroit, Michigan. And I remember asking my mom and dad what's going on. I remember my dad being really tired. I remember my mother coming into the house. And I remember something disturbing happened, and my mom had us all get under the bed. And it ended up not being what she thought it was, but that's the level of tension that was there. And when I said to my mom, "What's going on?" she said, "Well, there's a riot." That's what she said. And my mom was young woman with 3 kids at the time. She ended up having 5, but we went through that traumatic experience. And little kids can feel the tension of their parents. Everything's fine until mom is scared, and when mom's scared, you're scared. And I remember the feeling very well. So when I looked at little Liam with his little Spider-Man backpack and his little hat with the ears on it, one day Liam's going to be not 5, but 25, maybe 55. And Liam will never forget what he went through, how he himself was arrested at 5 years old, how he was in detention with his dad, how they lured him out. They used him to lure his father out, and how they had to go down to Texas. But then eventually, because people fought for them, they were able to come back home. And this is the reality that this federal government, which we pay taxes to, is putting us through. So yeah, all of us horrified by the deaths of Renee Good and Alex Preddy, but also the horror of a child being snatched like this, to use children as leverage. And there doesn't appear to be any moral barriers that they won't cross.
Final question. We've been under federal occupation here in Minnesota for over 60 days. As you think about the future, what are the top 3 things you think Minnesotans and folks across the country should know?
Well, so after all of these days we've been under this federal occupation, number one is we got to continue to fight them in court. That's what I do best. That's what I'm able to do. We got to bring, and that includes, the partnership we have with Hennepin County involving these homicides, involving Good and Preddy. And there are others, by the way, people who've died in custody. So that's the legal stuff, to keep doing what I do, showing up every day. Number 2, I really am motivated by this election. We all have to be thinking about election protection. Everyone should be concerned about FBI agents and going into Fulton County, Georgia, snatching boxes, things like that. Sending top intelligence officials down there to keep an eye on what's going on. You couple that together with when we filed our lawsuit to stop Operation Metro Surge, Pam Bondi says, "Oh, we can avoid all this if you give us your voter rolls." And then you have Steve Bannon saying, "Oh, we should have ICE just snatch some go to polling places." It is clear that people are beginning to think about this election a lot. And all of us need to make election protection our business. That's the second thing. And I'll just say this to anyone listening. I have heard people say things like, "Well, I'm not donating or I'm not volunteering on any election until you politicians get ICE out." And I said, well, that sounds nice and tough and militant and all that. But we got into this because of an election. And part of the way we're going to get out of it is going to be the election. It is not election. The election is not some side thing. It is a main thing, just like mutual aid, just like protesting, just like attending marches, just like suing. It is one of the tools in our basket that's going to get us free if we will use it properly. But we can't say there's an effective and powerful tool that we're not willing to use because we think somehow we're going to punish a politician. It just makes no sense and really demonstrates extreme naivete. And then the third thing I'm really got my mind focused on is really trying to push Congress to use every power of the purse that it has to do a number of things as it relates to ICE. One, cut their budget. It's just got to be slashed down to the bone. $75 billion. It's bigger than the FBI, bigger than the United States Marines. This is an enormous organization, and it makes absolutely no sense. Not only is the budget too big, the fundamental design of the Department of Homeland Security is fatally flawed from a democracy standpoint. Why in the world is immigration enforcement, which is a civil thing, tied up with anti-terrorism? It should be separate agencies altogether. And sure, we have to protect our country from terrorism. We have to protect, and there will be somebody working on border matters, but they don't need to be under the same roof, run by the same person who combines them, because that's how you get 3,500 armed paramilitaries showing up, bullying not just immigrants, but everybody. And that has got to stop. So we need a fundamental design change. We've got to say that immigration officials cannot wear masks, must be easily identifiable unless there's some compelling reason, you have vehicles that have their insignia on them, and cannot go to sensitive places like clinics, schools, hospitals, houses of worship. We've got to have some rules around here. So those are the three things that are really occupying my thoughts. There's a fourth one I'll just throw in there. Taking care of myself and my loved ones so I can stay in the long game. My workouts on my calendar, drinking my water, trying to, eat salads and stuff, so that I can stay ready for the fight. I cannot be laying up in bed with the flu. I got to be out there able to get down. And I would urge anybody else who's listening to the show to just remember that one of your things on your list, because everybody got their own, is take care of yourself so you can stay in this. So play the long game. That's right. Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Affording Your Life. This special episode is so critically important, and glad that you tuned in. Remember to rate, review, and share this show with your friends and family. But most of all, take care, be well, and we'll see you next time.